I recently lost 6 kg in a 12-week fat loss phase, and I'm going to take you through exactly how I did it. I'm going to break it down and I'm going to tell you all about it. Now, I just want to start this off by saying I am not going to discuss certain numbers. I'm not going to tell you what calories I was on, things like that, because it's just not relevant. My calories and my targets were very personal to me, but I am going to talk you through how you can kind of work out what your own targets are. And obviously I'm going to talk you through how I actually progressed my targets through the weeks, just to give you an idea of how the deficit looked. Also, as another side note before I start as well, I have obviously embarked on a lot of fat loss phases in my life. When I was younger, I used to struggle with fat loss massively. I was overweight, I was unhappy, I didn't really know what to do or how to do it. It was only when I started going to the gym that I actually, developed a good relationship with my body, a good relationship with food, and lost the weight. And since then, I have been on a journey to, build muscle and really build the physique that I want, with the mindsets that go along, with that, with the habits, with the routines, with the identity of, just kind of being the person who does it all. And that is the life that I live. I am very much the person who I train hard, I eat well, but I also love food. I love, a takeaway. I love, coffee and cake. I train hard, but I also rest really, really hard as well. And it is my job to help women to create that life for themselves and to achieve their goals and to achieve, their dreams, and get kind of unstuck with fat loss and actually start building a body identity and mindset of their dreams, not just for the summer, but forever. So yeah, I have very much been there. I know how it feels to struggle, and I learned a lot during that time. And those lessons have almost made this fat loss phase, I don't want to say easy, but very, very straightforward. The last fat loss phase that I did was this time last year. So in 2024, I decided to embark on my first ever bulk. Yeah, obviously I gained weight with the intention of obviously building muscle. Now, obviously after that, then you go into a, you go into a deficit, you go into a cut. I finished that probably this time last year, and I haven't done any sort of dieting deficit or anything since. I wasn't tracking, I wasn't doing anything. Now, life did get quite busy. There was a lot going on. Stress was high. My training, I really fell out of love with the gym. I was managing injuries. So there's a lot of different things going on. And I basically just gained a few kg more than I would have liked. I do believe maintenance is a range. Your maintenance weight is not a one weight. So let's just say your maintenance, let's just say you get to 60 kg. That's probably not going to be where you maintain. You're probably going to maintain anywhere from, I would say, 58.5 to 61.5, maybe even 62. It's a range. It's normally a range of, kind of 2 to 3 kg. And yeah, I was just sitting a few kg heavier than that. That is all. And I did notice that I didn't start to feel as confident in myself. I would wear baggy clothes to the gym. My clothes weren't necessarily fitting me as well as they normally did. And so obviously I have full control. So I decided that I was going to embark on a 12-week fat loss phase. So that is just a bit of background as to why I decided to do this. And another thing to note as well is I already was doing what I needed to do in terms of the routines and the habits. So what I mean by that is I already train. I was already doing my runs. I already go, and hit a good amount of steps per day. I was probably averaging kind of 10k steps a day. I already eat really, really well. I already plan my meals. I already prep my meals. I already get some good protein in. I already manage my stress, manage my sleep, all of those sorts of things. So I was already doing the things that that I needed to do, which again has made this journey so much easier because all I needed to do then was tweak the numbers. So if you are in a position where you're kind of going, actually, I don't really do anything that I need to do, what I would look at first of all is not how can I suddenly start doing all these things, but how can I build it up? So if you're not conscious of your steps at all, maybe spend a few weeks just building up a routine with steps. So looking at, okay, where can I fit in 10 to 15 minutes a day extra? Or, where can I fit in 3 30-minute walks a week? So you're just building that into routine, and you're finding that kind of you're finding your feet with that before you then go, right, here's my targets. So that would be a really important thing I would say as well. If you are someone who currently, let's just say you have no structure with your nutrition, let's just say you pick up anything from the shop, you decide what you're having on the day, you kind of wing it as you're going throughout the day. It's going to be really hard to go from that to tracking every single calorie and hitting your targets and hitting your macros and fueling your body. So what I would do first of all is kind of do like a foundation phase where you go, right, I'm going to start building those foundations first of all. So maybe you are going to look at, a meal structure within your meals. Maybe you are going to look at planning your meals. Maybe you are going to look at adding a protein source to your meals, just getting more organized with your meals, things like that as well. So that when you do go then into a more specific fat loss phase, you're already doing, you've already got that meal structure. You're already maybe prepping your meals or planning your meals. So then if you need to start tracking as well, that's a lot easier to tag onto it rather than trying to do all of that at once. Because that is the biggest mistake that people make, is so often they will go, right, I'm going to do this for this amount of weeks, or I've got a holiday coming up, right, I'm going to do the steps, the workouts, runs, cardio, food, protein, low calories, all of this sort of stuff. And actually then it gets really, really overwhelming. And what they then do is they focus on what they're not doing rather than what they are doing. And then obviously that's when you get caught in this kind of spiral of all or nothing. And then that's when you stop. And it's generally, you don't generally stop because you can't do it. It's because you're making something mean something about you, which then means that you stop taking the action you need to. So I always say this to my clients, you know, you're going to have days when you go over your calories. You're going to have days where you don't hit your targets, but it's up to you how you make those days mean something about you. You can either go, okay, it is what it is. I'm going to focus on what I can do. I can still do this. I can still do this. I can get straight back to normal tomorrow. Or you can go, oh my God, I've messed up. And you can then stop doing the things that you need to do. And obviously that's going to then impact your journey. Okay, so first things first, like I said, I already had those foundations built, which helps massively. So what I would genuinely look at doing is, if you are looking at going into a specific fat loss phase, don't make the mistake of going, oh, I'm just going to start kind of like doing a little bit here and there, because then what happens is you end up in a position where you're kind of making changes, but you're kind of not. There's not that urgency to it. There's not that kind of, oh, I need to do this now for this reason. And then you don't make the changes that you need to, but in your head you are, and then you feel like you're not doing enough and you just go around in circles. So I would spend a good, I would say 4 weeks making changes to your habits, really looking at, okay, where can I get more protein in my diet? Where can I be more organized with my diet and meal plan and meal prep? Where can I start getting more steps in? Where can I manage my stress? Where can I start prioritizing my sleep better? Where can I maybe drink more water? Automatically, by doing those things, if you're not currently doing any of those things, you are likely to lose body fat as a result, but you're also going to feel so much better. You're going to feel so much healthier. You're going to feel fitter. You're going to feel stronger, and you're going to be in a much better position to go into that fat loss phase. So I would definitely spend some time, first of all, building up those sorts of things, really looking at your habits and your routines before you then go into a more specific fat loss phase, where maybe you do then start tracking, or you do have that, you know, you do make those kind of extra sacrifices that you need in order to elicit fat loss. So where did I start? Week 1, I started off with really just focusing on consistency with what I was currently doing. So I started tracking my calories again. You can use calorie calculators online. There's loads of them. I worked out roughly what my maintenance calories were, and I went into a deficit of approximately 150. Now, again, this is a big mistake people will make, is they'll often go, right, I'm going to jump 500 calories. You don't need to do that off the bat. You really don't need to. And what generally happens when you do that is you then end up on super low calories. Your body adapts quite quickly, and then it makes it harder for you to lose fat. So when you're basically in a deficit, let's say this is your deficit. So you've got the calories that your body burns here. So this is exercise, this is your metabolism, this is your body functioning. Your body needs energy, it needs calories to function. For me to move my hand, for my brain to work, for my heart to pump, all of these things require energy. If this is where your food intake is, so you've got quite a big deficit, what is going to happen over time is your body is going to adapt. So whereas your body was burning this much energy, your body is now going to be burning this much energy. So your deficit is smaller. So that's when you then have to drop food further, or you increase your expenditure further to again create that deficit. If you're starting off in a deficit this big and your body adapts, you're going to have to drop your calories really low, or you're going to have to go to extremes in order to see progress or maintain progress. You want to start off slower. Okay, so I worked out what my maintenance calories were, and then I went into an approximate 150 calorie deficit. So my cardio was through 2 runs a week. I was also doing 10k steps every single day, and just really focusing on being consistent with this. And I was doing 2 strength sessions a week. Now, what I do is I take my weight daily. So I took my photos at the beginning, measurements at the beginning. I take my weight daily. This is so that I have as much data as possible to make decisions. So what I was looking at was, okay, how is my body weight changing? How are my averages changing? Your body weight every day is going to fluctuate so much. It does not matter. It does not matter. We are not looking at single figures of, yes, this is you making progress, or no, this is not. We are literally looking at, okay, this is just a number. This is just another piece of the jigsaw. This is just another piece of data that we are going to then use to look at your averages. Week 1, that is what I did. I did the calories, did my 2 runs, my 2 strength, and I had my step target, which I actually ended up exceeding. Now, how have I made sure that I hit all my targets, or 95% of my targets during my deficit? Number 1, I have got organised. This, if you go to my last Sunday reset video, it covers every single thing that I did every single week to make sure that I hit my targets. So every single week on a Friday, I sat down and I planned my next week. Now, I keep everything very, very similar. So my weekly structure will always look the same. My daily structure will always look the same. And then if I have anything else to add into it, I will literally just add that in. So what that means is I always pretty much know what I'm doing when I'm doing it. So again, it takes the thinking out of it. What you want to think of with fat loss is, how can I take away decision making as much as possible? meal. I would on a Friday sit down and plan my entire next week. You'll see in that video that it's very straightforward because I literally just kind of duplicate my plans. Then what I would do is go through and plan my meals. Now again, you'll notice in that video that I rinse and repeat a lot. A lot. I will go through and I will plan every single meal for the following week. And then what I will do is I will go and input that into MyFitnessPal. So I would go and track it on the Friday. So come the following week, everything is already tracked. I know exactly where I'm at. I know exactly what calories I've got left, what targets I've got left to hit. I know exactly where I'm at. From that, I would then order my food shop on a Friday to arrive on a Sunday. So what that meant was I didn't even have to think about it. Again, it was done, it was sorted. When it arrived on a Sunday, I would then do my meal prep. So for the first 3 days of the week, pretty much all my meals were organised. My dinners were nice and easy, so they didn't take long. And I then knew that I was hitting all of my targets and making life as easy as possible for myself. So again, I didn't have to make decisions during the week. If you're kind of going, oh, well, I don't know if I'm going to fancy this, I don't know if I'm going to fancy this, or maybe you've got to go shopping, or maybe you are making it harder for yourself. Make it as easy for yourself as possible. If it works, rinse and repeat. And don't overcomplicate things either. Don't be like, oh, I'm trying to eat a different meal every single day. I generally will pick 2 breakfasts, 2 lunches, and just rotate these throughout the week. So when I'm doing my meal prep, I made the same breakfast and lunches Monday through to Wednesday. And then Thursday, Friday, I'd have maybe slightly different breakfasts or slightly different lunches, but keep the basis the same. So for example, a Thursday could be cottage cheese and eggs on toast. Friday could be bacon on toast. Do you know what I mean? So try and keep it as straightforward as possible. Try not to overcomplicate things loads. And again, in terms of like daily structure, knowing that, okay, my workout is going to be at this time, my meals are at this time, it then again means I don't have to think about it. I don't have to think, oh, what time am I going to eat? What time am I going to eat? When am I going to go here? When am I going to do this? I literally just know when it's happening. So that is something that I would definitely kind of work on as well, is finding a routine that works for you and just rinse and repeating. You do not need to change things up all the time. That is one of the biggest mistakes people make. So going into week 2, what did I have on the Saturday? I had an event on the Saturday. I can't remember what it was, but I knew that I needed extra calories for it. So what I did was my calorie target was exactly the same, but I banked about 100 calories a day, Monday to Friday. So this meant going into Saturday, I had 500 calories extra. So obviously that meant that I had a lot more room to play with. So I essentially had the same calorie target across the week, but I just split it up slightly differently during the day to mean that I had more of an allowance for Saturday. Does that make sense? So obviously what I generally do with my calories is I have my weekly calories and then I would split them pretty evenly between the 7 days. But in the case of like having an event on, I'll maybe drop some slightly in the week to allow for slightly more on the weekend, but still hit that weekly target. What you want to be careful of with this is that you're not essentially going into, oh, I'm just going to eat less in the week so I can have more on the weekend, because it can become glorified under eating and overeating, and that's not really what we want. But yeah, that is what I did on this week. Everything else stayed exactly the same. I was managing an injury this week, so I swapped one of my runs for an hour cardio. So I did 1 run, 2 strength, 1 hour cardio, and 10k steps. Now, week 3 is when I did make a slight change. So my progress, I had been seeing progress, but it was just a little bit slower than I wanted. I had an idea going into this deficit of how much I wanted to lose, where I wanted to get to, where I felt most comfortable. And I worked out that in order to do that, I roughly needed to lose half a kilo a week. I decided in week 3, I was like, do you know what? I know I can push harder than this. I know I can do more than this. This is absolutely fine. So what I then did was I dropped my calories by 100 and I increased my steps by 1,000. Now, when I say increase my steps by 1,000, I was already consistently hitting over my target. So whilst my target was increased by 1,000, the actual number probably was less than this, if that makes sense. So week 3, I dropped my calories by 100, increased my steps by 1,000, and I kept this structure for week 3, 4, and 5. So for the first 2 weeks, I did the same thing. For the next 3 weeks, I had the same targets. Week 6 then, I again decided to push it a little bit harder. Obviously this was halfway through the deficit. So what I did then was I dropped my calories by 50 and I increased my steps by 500. And again, I kept this going for 3 weeks. Then come week 9, obviously I had 3 weeks left. What I did then was I dropped my calories by another 100 and I kept everything else the same. So that was the same then for week 9, 10 and 11. So I had the same targets for those weeks. So you will see that I really only changed my targets every sort of 3 weeks or so. And this was only when I also felt it was necessary to do so. You don't need to be changing your targets all the time. But again, I had a really good amount of data to be able to go, okay, this is the impact that's having on my body. When I do this is how it impacts my progress. So that's obviously then the data that I used to then dictate what changes I was making. You'll also notice that when I made a change, the most I dropped my calories by in one go was 100. After that, I dropped it by 50, and then after that, I dropped it by 100. So you'll see that, you know, over between week 1 and week 11, my calories only dropped by 250. And then my steps again stayed at 11.5. I had 2 runs and 2 strengths. Now, a big thing going into this for me as well was also, yes, I want to lose body fat and I want to feel more confident in my own skin, but I also really want to be able to train hard, and I really want to fuel my running, and I want to manage my injuries as best as I can. So that was definitely a contributing factor to making decisions about changing my calories and things like that as well. So week 12 then, this was obviously the final week. I dropped calories by another roughly like 70 to 100. Literally, like, if I'm being honest, I didn't need to do this. It was just more so for me to just be like, right, let's just go hard on this final week. So yeah, I dropped my calories, and then I kept everything else the same. And at the end of week 12, I was 6 kg down. I'd lost 7 centimeters off my waist, 6 centimeters off my hips, 3 centimeters off my thighs, and yeah, feeling really, really good. The last week as well, I also tried on like 3 pairs of trousers that I hadn't worn in ages. They all went from being too small to actually too big. I can feel a visual difference. I feel a lot more toned. I feel like I've reduced body fat. I've actually lost it on my stomach, which is one of the places that I really, really struggle to lose it. And honestly, I could not be happier. Yes, there was days where I was hungry. Yes, there was days where I wanted to give up. Yes, there was days where I didn't want to hit my steps. Yes, there was days where I didn't want to do all these things. But, and this is a really, really important but, I knew what I was doing. I knew that, okay, this is just a phase. And I think this is one of the biggest issues that we see at the minute within the fitness industry is I am all about creating a lifestyle that's going to help you maintain your results. I think it's so, so important. But, and this is a big but, so many people are trying to be so balanced in their approach to fat loss that they end up just not making any changes. You have to make sacrifices in order to get to your goals. It's as simple as that. And by sacrifices, I do not mean drop your calories really low and increase your movement by loads. I mean, you need to sometimes say no. You need to sometimes say no to that night out if you know that that night out is going to end up with you being in a surplus and end up with you then feeling guilty for the next day. You sometimes need to say no for having that cake with your coffee, or you need to say no to having that takeaway. You are going to have to say no. There are sacrifices you have to make. You don't have to make all the sacrifices. As you can see, I still made things work for me. There was a meal out that I went on. I would say I had that meal on that Saturday, or that event on that Saturday. I also then had a Chinese on a different day. But again, I made that work for my calories. So I just had to pick the option that aligned best. And then what I did was focus on what I could do outside of that. So get my protein in, get some good nutrients in, drink my water, etc. Also on Mother's Day, I went out for a 2-course meal. What did I do? It was quite an early meal. So I literally just had a coffee in the morning, had that meal, and then had a high protein dinner with lots of nutrients in when I got home. So again, I was managing what I could. So even though that meal wasn't tracked, I knew that I was doing everything in my power to keep it under control. We also went for a 3-course meal on a random Thursday which was very random. But again, I focused on what I could do. I think if I remember rightly, I did bank some calories for that. I think I banked about 50 to 100 per day for that. On that day, I focused on a high protein, high nutrient breakfast, high protein, high nutrient lunch, went, enjoyed the meal, and cracked on as normal the next day. And that's what you'll kind of notice. I think there was probably 5 events during that whole time where I had to make things work and I had to maybe move things around. But the biggest thing that I did was literally just focus on what I could do and just get straight back to normal the next day. And that is quite honestly it. That is it. So biggest takeaways, I think, if you are looking at going into a fat loss journey, make sure you spend some time building those foundations first of all, then go into a structured time phase. The biggest mistake people make is go, I just want to lose this weight, or I'm just going to lose this. Because if you don't have an idea of how you're going to get there or how long it's going to take you, what is going to end up happening is you probably are going to say yes to too many things that then throw you off, and then you're going to knock your own confidence and knock your trust. Because so many people think, oh, I don't want to give this up though because that's part of my life. Fat loss is not a life thing. Fat loss is not a lifestyle. The idea of a fat loss phase should be you go in, you get your result, you get out of it. Like I went in 12 weeks, got my result, I'm in my reverse, I'll be at my maintenance in a few weeks, and then I'll just go back to living my life, saying yes to the cake with coffee, saying yes to takeaways, things like that as well. Obviously, I'll still keep it structured. I'm not going to go overboard and, you know, gain the weight back, but it's really, really important that you do have that phase, because it then gives you that extra kind of little, you know, it gives you that extra bit of discipline to be like, right, okay, actually I can do this. A third thing, build it up. If you're suddenly, you know, quite low on your targets, let's say, like I said, you're not, you know, you're not prepping, you're not planning, you're not organized with your food, you're not getting steps in, you're not doing workouts. If you suddenly try and do all of those things all at once, it's going to be overwhelming. So again, kind of coming back to that foundations phase, spend some time, first of all, building routines, spend some time building up those things. If your target, if you're currently hitting 4,000 steps, don't try and suddenly hit 10. Maybe look for doing 5, and then look at how you can comfortably fit 5 into your routine. Being organized will change your life. Again, like I said, it's all in my Sunday reset video, but being organized will change your life. Get organized, plan your week, plan your workouts, plan your food, meal prep where you need to, track ahead of time, do everything in your power to make sure that you do not have to make a decision on the day. Make sure it's already sorted. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. If you spend an hour on a Sunday planning your week, you can quite literally take hours and hours and hours of stress and thought and everything out of your week, and you can literally just crack on. Rinse and repeat what works. If it works, do it more. You don't need to keep things exciting. You don't need to, you know, you don't need the dopamine hit from having a new meal and having this and having this and having this. The dopamine hit will come from the progress that you see when you rinse and repeat the basics. It's going to get boring. You're not going to want to do it. It doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. You have to show up. Again, just lose this kind of thought of like, oh, but this will keep me motivated or this won't. You don't need motivation. If you're not doing something because you're not motivated, that is a decision that you are making. You are making that decision that because you don't feel like it, you're not doing it. And if that is your approach, you're not going to get to your goals. So you have to literally push that to the side and go, right, okay, discipline has to take over. And again, this is where those small changes make such a difference, because let's say, for example, you get to the end of the day and you're on 4,000 steps and your target is 10, you're probably not going to, you know, go and do anything because you're going to be so far off and you're going to feel deflated. If you're on 4 and your target is 5, you're probably going to go and get that 1,000 steps in because you can, because it's not much of a difference. And then what's going to happen is, of course, you're then going to hit your target, you're building your confidence in yourself, you're building your trust in yourself, and you're also building routines, and you're building that habit that is going to help you maintain things even once the fat loss phase is over. Organization, structure, building foundations first of all, having specific timed phases. Don't overhaul everything at once is another big one. If you go and change you change your cardio, you change your steps, you change your calories all at once, you're not going to know kind of like what's working and what's not. You're not going to know the effect that things are having. So I would generally only make small tweaks per week, or only pick one thing per week to change. So for example, you will see that most weeks I change my calories and maybe my steps, but I change both a little bit. So I could have changed one more, but I changed both a little bit just to, again, give me that little bit of balance. So yeah, don't make huge changes all at once, because like I said, your body's going to adapt, and you still want to have, you know, fuel to, you know, be energized and go and do your workouts and go and do your sessions and all of these things. Use multiple measures of progress is another one. Do not just rely on the scales. I will pop in visuals of how my weekly data looked, how my monthly data looked, and how my total data looked. And you will see that daily it was fluctuating so much. It fluctuates loads because there are so many things in your body going on that, you know, you can't control. Just because the scales go up, it doesn't mean you've gained fat. You need your averages to look at an average across the week, and then obviously that alongside how you're feeling, how your clothes are fitting, your measurements, your photos, how you're performing in the gym, how, you know, all of these sorts of things, that will then determine the changes that you make moving forward. So use multiple measures of progress, and again, think of the scales as data, not as yes, you've made progress or no, you haven't. It's all just data to create a bigger picture of what is going on. And that is pretty much that. I am now in my reverse, so very exciting times ahead. I hope you found this video useful. If you do have any questions at all, please let me know, pop them in the comments, message me on Instagram, and I'll get back to you. But yes, thank you so much for clicking on this video. Thank you so much for watching it, and I shall see you in the next video.